Welcome to all of us who are joining us this Motzei Shabbos. So Sunday mornings at the Jewish Learning Center in Manalapan, New Jersey, we have a class on Mesillas Yesharim, the Path of the Just. This is the edition we use. It's, if you can see it, there's a little reflection there. It's the Art Scroll edition. It's relatively new. Feldheim also has a nice edition. If you're interested, I can give you links where you can get it. And every Sunday morning after davening, we study a little bit of Mesillas Yesharim, the Path of the Just, and obviously we're not having shul this week, so I'm just recording it Motzei Shabbos, and then, God willing, we'll send it out Sunday. So, what is Mesillas Yesharim? Just for the people that are joining us for the first time, Mesillas Yesharim is a book which starts out by asking, what are we here for? What are we in this world for? What is the meaning of life, basically? Something which I hope many of us have thought of at one point in our life. I hope all of us have thought of that one point. What am I doing here? What does God want from me? What should I be spending all of my efforts in my life? And that's discussed at the beginning of Mesillas Yesharim. And the short version, what are we here for, is to serve Hashem, to get closer to Hashem, develop a relationship with Hashem, and to fulfill the commandments to the best of our ability, and to grow in avodas Hashem, and to get a closeness with God. That's our meaning. That's the meaning of life, and that's what we should be putting our effort in. So if we know that that's the meaning of life, how do we get there? How do we achieve our goal of life and live with true meaning and being successful, fulfilled people? So the Mesillas Yesharim, the rest of the book, after defining what the purpose of life is, discusses how do we get there? What are the steps? And he offers a step-by-step ladder of attributes that we need to acquire and things that we should work on individually, and how to get there. So we are actually on a new section. So those of you who are just joining us for the first time, it's actually a great time to join, because we're starting on the second attribute of how to get closer to Hashem, the second midah we need in our step of avodas Hashem. The first one was zihirus. Zihirus means, this is what we just finished, means being careful in everything we do to not violate any of the mitzvahs loisaseh, not to violate any of the negative commandments in the Torah. To be careful in avodas Hashem, to think about what we do before we do it, to think maybe I am violating one of the mitzvahs, maybe I'm doing something I shouldn't be doing, and to sit and think about what is my purpose of life, and is my action that I'm about to do going to fit in with that purpose. That is zihirus, watchfulness, as it's translated, and right, those are the first few chapters that we just finished. And now we are on the second one, which is zrizus, which is translated as alacrity or zealousness. And we're going to discuss now what that is. And we do this class, again, I said once a week, Sunday mornings, but recording it now Saturday night. And again, as always, if you have any questions, please type them in, and I'll try to answer. Okay, Chapter 6, Perek Vov. If anyone happens to have this edition, again, on page 113, it's the Art Scroll edition. It was, I really like this edition because it's really good, and it was translated by a friend of mine who's very, very smart, very holy guy. Okay, so Chapter 6. Achar HaZihirus, Yavo HaZrizus. After we learned about the trait of Zihirus, of watchfulness, we come to Zrizus, or alacrity. Ki HaZihirus so v'vav aloisaseh. Zihirus is related to all of the negative prohibitions. V'hazrizus al ha'aseh, and zrizus, or zealousness, is related to all of the positive commandments. V'hainu, which means, V'hainu, it says, Sur me'rav aseh tov, the pasuk in Tehillim, the verse in Psalm says, you should distance yourself from evil and do good. So to serve Hashem, there's two things we have to do. One, distance yourself from evil. Two is do good. Distancing ourselves from evil refers to the negative prohibitions, and doing good refers to the positive commandments, right? There are two types of mitzvahs in the Torah. There are 365 negative commandments, meaning do not do this, do not do that. And there are 248 positive commandments. You shall do this, you shall do that, right? For example, we have Pesach coming up. There's a mitzvah to eat matzah. That's a positive commandment. That's one of the 248. And then there's also a negative prohibition of thou shalt not eat chametz, thou shalt not eat leavened bread. That's one of the 365 negative commandments. So the midah of zihirus, that refers to not violating the negative commandments, and the midah of zrizus, that refers to the positive commandments. Ve'inyan shel zrizus mavur. What is zrizus? Shehu hakdama lemitzvos al hashlamas inyanim. That is to go to run to do the mitzvahs, to hasten to do them, and to complete them. So there's two parts of it. One, alacrity means that you run to do the mitzvahs, you're not lazy, and you're zealous to do the mitzvah. And two, not only to do it, but you're zealous to finish the mitzvah. And like the rabbi said in the Gemara Pesachim, you have to be zaris to do the mitzvahs. You have to be hasten to perform the mitzvahs. And that Gemara is referring to, and as they point out on the bottom here, that what is the example of someone who was zaris to do mitzvahs, to be very quick to do mitzvahs? So that was Avram Avinu. Avraham was he was commanded to sacrifice his son, to bring his son up. He was commanded to bring his son up on Mount Moriah, and he thought to sacrifice him. And in that case, not only did Avraham do it, but he actually ran to do it. Hashem told me to do something, so he ran to do it, right? And they point out that, right, that's a very, very difficult thing. Sometimes we can be zaras. Usually, we're only zaras to do things that we want to do, or when it's an easy mitzvah. One could imagine to sacrifice one's son is got to be the hardest thing that Hashem could ever commanded anybody to do. And nevertheless, not only did Avram Avinu do it, but he was zaras to do it. He was zealous in doing it, and he hastened to do it. He ran to do it. Continues the Ramchal in Mesilas Yesharim. V'zeh ki k'moshe tzarek pichus gadol v'hashkafa rabba linatzel memokshei hayetzer limalit min harash liyishlot banu lis'ar v'ma'asenu. Kein tzarek pichus gadol v'hashkafa la'echaz b'mitzvahs v'liskos behem v'lo sa'avadna b'menu. So he says that, for those of us who are with us in the previous classes, we talked about in Zehirus that one has to be very smart to fulfill Zehirus properly. To not violate any of the negative commandments, one has to be very smart and has to be cunning. Because the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, tries to get us to sin in very creative ways. And if we don't sit and plan and try to think about what the Yetzer Hara is going to try, how he's going to try and entrap us, then we don't really stand a chance. So he says, so too, just like we have to be smart when it comes to being careful not to violate the negative prohibitions, so too we have to be careful and how to acquire this trait of zrizos to hastenly fulfill the positive commandments. And right, it's worth it for those who haven't learned it to learn through Zehirus and to see all of the ways that we have to be careful and to think about how to avoid the Yetzer Hara when it comes to not violating negative prohibitions. Right? He says someone said a joke that if he had to pick a chavrusa, a study partner, he would want it to be the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination that tries to get us to sin. Why? Because the Yetzer Hara is always on time and he's very, very smart. Right? The Yetzer Hara is very creative in the ways that he tries to get us to sin. So if we don't sit, first of all, if we don't sit and think about what we're doing, which is something that the Mesilas Yesharim talked about before, think about why are we here? What is our purpose in life? And not only that, we have to think now, how is the Yetzer Hara going to try to trap me and going to try to entice me to sin? If somebody really, really likes McDonald's and every day he comes home from work and he passes a McDonald's, something he might want to do is thinking about going home another way from work. So if we don't sit and we think about these things, then we don't stand a chance. Something which the Ramchal discussed earlier at length was that one of the biggest tricks the Yetzer Hara does to try to get us to sin is he doesn't give us time to think. Right? He compares it to Paro. We have Pesach coming up. That Paro, he took away the straw from the Jewish people so that they would have to build their bricks and make their bricks for the pyramids or whatever they were building without straw. He used to provide them straw, and then he took away the straw. Why did Paro do this? Paro did this because he wanted the Jews to always be working and never have a chance to sit and think so they wouldn't rebel against him. He says, so too, that's what the Yetzer Hara does to us. He makes our lives so busy. We have so many obligations that we have to do. We have to go to work. We have to take care of our family. We have to do 10 million other things. And we don't have the time to sit and think for 5 minutes about what are we here for? What are we on earth for? Why am I working so hard? So he says that is one of the greatest things that the Yetzer Hara tries to get us is to distract us so we don't have time to think. So I was just thinking over Shabbos, I would think now that many of us have a lot more time now because we are homebound. And now would be a great time to set aside a few minutes to think, why am I here and how should I be accomplishing that mission? I don't know if anyone saw the clip of the Israeli mom who, she had 4 kids and she was getting texts and WhatsApp messages from all of 8 teachers for each of the kids, and she was going nuts. And she said it definitely wasn't easier being home, but for those of us who are home and have a little bit more time, than we usually do. Now is definitely a time to sit and to think about, why am I here? And that's the Mesil Shasharm. If you're going to learn a book when you're home during the quarantine, Mesil Shasharm, The Path of the Just, is definitely high up there in the book that one could learn. So he says, just like we need, when it comes to Zahirus, we need to have a plan, and we need to think how we're going to overcome the Yetzer Hara. So too when it comes to Zrizus, when it comes to performing mitzvahs in a zealous fashion and running to do mitzvahs. Ki kemoshe mesavev u'mishtadel ha'Yetzer Hara b'tachbulosav lahapel as ha'adam b'michmaros ha'chet. Just like the Yetzer Hara tries to get us trapped and tricks us into doing sins, kein mishtadel limnoa mimenu asiyas ha'mitzvahs ula'abdu mimenu. So too, he does the same thing when it comes to fulfilling mitzvahs, and he tries to get us to lose mitzvahs. Just like the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, tries to get us to violate sins, to commit sins, so too the Yetzer Hara tries to get us to lose out mitzvahs and not get to perform mitzvahs, positive mitzvahs. And if a person doesn't try his best and he's lazy and he doesn't try his best, a person's going to be left without any mitzvahs. If someone doesn't have something giving himself chizuk, meaning to inspire oneself, if a person doesn't work to inspire oneself to fulfill mitzvahs, then he has no chance. The Yetzer Hara for sure is going to entice him and trap him, and he'll just be lazy and he won't do it. V'tira, because we see ki teva ha'adam kavid me'od, a person by nature is very sluggish, he translates it as. Ki afir secham yozgas, a person's made of physical matter, and that makes a person dense. A person by nature, we're all lazy. That's our we're all physical beings, and by definition, a physical being is lazy. Al kain lo yachbot adam b'torach malacha. Person doesn't want to work, right? He doesn't want to have to toil away. Umisha rotza liskos la'avodas habore yisbarach. Someone who wants to be successful in serving Hashem, tzarich she'izgaber negativo atzmo v'yizgaber v'yizdares. He has to fight and he has to strengthen himself to overcome his natural tendency for laziness. If a person just lets himself be in his sluggish nature, he for sure won't be successful. The Ramchal is telling us that if we don't gather together like we're doing now and study how to run to do mitzvahs and how to not be lazy, we don't stand a chance, because for sure we're going to be overcome by our natural tendency for laziness, and we have absolutely no chance. There's no way we are going to overcome this and be successful in doing mitzvahs. And he quotes here on the bottom a letter from the Chazon Ish. The Chazon Ish was one of the greatest rabbis, if not the greatest rabbi of the last generation. I think he passed away in 1953, I want to say, but in the 50s he lived in Bnei Brak. And in one of his letters he has a very interesting thing, which they write down here in the footnote, which I have right here, the letters of the Chazon Ish. If you can read Hebrew, highly recommend it. And if someone wants to maybe translate it into English for the rest of us, it would be great. The Hebrew's kind of hard. But he writes that, when it comes to laziness, it's usually only with spiritual things and things that we're supposed to be doing in a certain sense. But when it comes to physical desires, laziness is much less pronounced. For example, if you want to run to fulfill some physical desire, whether it's forbidden food or an illicit relation, usually a person runs to do it, and he's very excited to do it, and all of a sudden he's not lazy, and he has a little voice in his head that says, hey, don't do it. But really, he is running to do it, and he doesn't have laziness. It's only when it comes to getting up in the morning, and you have to go to shul, all of a sudden then it's, I want to sleep for 5 more minutes, and I'm very tired and lazy. So he says laziness isn't just, it's a spiritual Yetzer Hara laziness that tries to prevent us from doing mitzvos and spiritual things, while it does not prevent us from doing sins and averos. And he also writes in the same letter, the Ramchal, it says that someone, I'll read it here, he writes, he says, the words of Torah are only miskayim, they only remain, they only a person only acquires them, someone who kills himself over them. So he says, what does it mean to learn Torah? You have to kill yourself over it. So he says, to be successful in Torah study, you have to work really hard, and you have to overcome your laziness, and you have to overcome your negative character traits. And when you overcome a negative character traits, and it's like you're killing one of your you're killing one of your natural character traits. It's like you're killing yourself. When you work to overcome laziness or another negative character traits to do something spiritual and to study Torah, it actually has the status of like you're killing yourself. You're destroying a negative part of yourself. And when you destroy a negative part of yourself, you can be Kona Torah. You could acquire Torah, right? Torah study and anything spiritual. People often, they go to the Kotel for the first time and they say, oh, I didn't feel anything. Spirituality, to get a high level of spirituality, it's like anything else good in life. It requires work. Just because you go to a synagogue one time or you go to the Kotel one time, you can't expect to have all these spiritual epiphanies, because it's not easy. Anything that's good and that's worth it, that's objectively good, that we need in life, has to be done with hard work, and we have to overcome our natural laziness. So that's why the Chazon Ish writes, or the Gemara writes, that real Torah is only acquired by someone who kills himself over it, meaning he works hard to overcome his negative character traits. So again, we just studied the beginning of chapter 6 of Mesilas Yesharim, The Path of the Just. Was written by the Ramchal. Sorry, I didn't mention that earlier. This was written by the Ramchal, one of the greatest Kabbalists of all time in the 1500s. And we just learned that Zrizus, the attribute of being zealous to run to do mitzvahs and complete positive mitzvahs, that's something which requires planning, and it requires preparing oneself and learning about it, and one has to be very smart in how to do it. It's not something which comes naturally. Naturally, we're all very lazy people, and if one wants to be successful in serving Hashem and in fulfilling all the positive commandments, he has to be preparing for it, and he has to learn about it and strengthen himself. And that's really what we're doing now by studying chapter 6 of the Mesilas Yesharim. So if we learn this once a week. So anyone who's interested in receiving these classes via email, please just message me privately your email. More than happy to add you to our list. And also during the time of quarantine, we've been studying the laws of Lashon Hara, of evil speech, and how to speak about each other nicely, because Rav Chaim Kanievsky, the greatest sage alive, has said that the way, if we study these laws of Lashon Hara about how to speak nicely about each other, and we get together as a community, and we don't fight, then we will hopefully be healthy from the coronavirus. And I combine that just now what I said with what Rabbi Feldman said, the Rosh Yeshiva of Ner Yisrael, that he believes one of the reasons we are forced to be apart is because we didn't get along when we were together. So we are trying our best now to learn how to get along with each other, and one of the ways to do that is by learning to speak positively. And then also, we have a class on Tuesdays, which we'll live stream here, and we'll email it out if anyone wants, on the weekly Torah portion. This weekly Torah portion is Vayikra. It's all about the sacrifices. If you ever wondered why we have so many sacrifices in Judaism, well, we don't bring them now, but they're in the Torah. Why is it so important? What do they mean? Please also send me your email, message me. I'd be more than happy to send that out, and hope everyone has a great, healthy, and spiritually great, healthy week, and one filled with spiritual growth.